A dermatologist in London was so nonchalant and just said, "You've got psoriasis, there's no cure, and you have it forever." And in that moment, I describe it as a sacred no. It wasn't me speaking that no. It just came out.
You said no?
I said no. When she said, "You've got psoriasis, there's no cure and there's nothing you can do to cure it," I just said no. And I put my hand up like that. But it wasn't me. At this point in time, I didn't have anything close to the knowledge that I have now. I wasn't even really that familiar with the mind-body connect.
Well, the mind didn't, but your body knew.
Exactly. It was a rejection of the label and a rejection of the diagnosis. That was a big moment where something was speaking through me and moving through me saying that this is not the way, that there is another way and I will find another way. Most artificial lighting, 99% of common LED lighting in homes and in built environments is toxic to human health because it is enriched with blue light, short wavelength light, that is very stimulating to the nervous system. It is devoid of red and infrared light, which in nature normally balances the impact of higher energy blue light. Modern LED lighting also flickers, which most people may not be aware of, but perhaps you've had the example of you've taken a video of a screen or some lights, and then you watch the video and you can see the tears across the screen and you think, "I didn't see that. What is that?" What's happening there is your camera is picking up the flicker that is flickering so fast that it is below your visual perception, but it is triggering your nervous system. When we come indoors, typically we have these blue enriched, devoid of long wavelengths, flickering lights that do not change. Your home lights only have one setting for the most part, whereas the sun does change. It's a dynamically changing system. When you come back inside, you need to be mindful of this type of light. My company, InRhythm, developed a light bulb that deals with these problems that can support your circadian rhythms at all times of day, but particularly once you come back inside.
Hey, beautiful soul. Yes, you. You are beautiful, whether you identify as female, male, trans, alien, fairy, witch, human, daughter, son, mother, sister, brother, grandpa, grandma. You are beautiful, and don't you ever forget to be you to the full. Thank you so much for stopping by and clicking on this episode. It has called you for a reason, and that is because it matches your frequency and your vibration, and there is a message in it for you. Before every episode, I sit in meditation and I ask for those who are meant to benefit from my conversations be guided to it. If you resonate with this episode, please subscribe, like, comment below, and even better, share this episode with another being. Now, when we share our information, it helps to bring consciousness to as many beings as possible. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for spending your time here and working on yourself to find out who you are so that you can shine your light for others and help the consciousness of the planet. Now, without further ado, let's dive into this week's episode. Hey, it's Melissa, and welcome to the Purpose Search podcast, where I discuss all things science, spirituality, and purpose. I hold conversations with people who are incredibly knowledgeable in their field and have found their purpose, which I hope will spark something inside you to listen to the call of your heart and intuition. We welcome Jai Kapoor to the Purpose Search podcast today, who is a lifelong spiritual seeker, science nerd, and lover of light. He is the co-founder and CEO of InRhythm, a company whose mission is effortlessly reconnecting human biology with the natural rhythms of the earth. He is also the author of The Story of Light, a modern treatise on light as the organizing principle of life, consciousness, and connection, and perhaps our greatest ally in birthing of the new earth. Jai, welcome to the Purpose Search podcast. It's so exciting to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Melissa. It's great to be here and really excited for this conversation.
Yeah, I can't wait to see where this unfolds. Now, every episode, I start with a short breath exercise to drop us into the body and get present with the conversation as we come to screen or we're listening through our ears. So today, please do not do this if you're driving, but I invite you to close your eyes if you feel safe to do so. But you can also take a soft gaze in front of you if that feels more comfortable. So today we are going to work on continuous breathing, but focusing on making the exhale longer than the inhale. So if you'd like to plant your feet onto the floor, close your eyes if you feel comfortable to do so. And we're going to take a deep breath in for 4, breathing into our belly. Here we go. Breathing in 1, 2, 3, 4, and breathing out for 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Breathing in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Breathing out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Breathe in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Breathe out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And last time, breathing in the deepest breath that you've breathed in today. Breathing in. 1, 2, 3, 4. And breathing out. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And when you are ready, come back to the screen and drop into the conversation. Welcome, Jay. What's that?
Said I was hoping you'd do a little breathing exercise at the start. Said, if I know her, she'll do that. So,
we love a breathe, don't we, Jay?
Love it.
Oh, thank you so much for coming on today. I always like to start my questions with what sparks joy in you? Because I really don't like that conversation of what do you do? When we first met in Bali, we had that conversation like flown at us like all the time, like what do you do, what do you do? And I just like remember feeling so triggered by that conversation, that question, and it just really did not sit well in my body because I was at a period of my life where I like didn't know if I wanted to stay in the West End. I didn't know if I wanted to teach anymore. I didn't know who I was becoming. I was coming out of a 13-year relationship. I was finding out who I was. So that question, what do you do, just doesn't sit right with me. So I like to ask, what lights you up and sparks joy in you? And how would you describe that about yourself?
What a great question. Yeah, I also don't really like asking people what they do. I tend to ask people what gets them out of bed in the morning. What are they excited about? What are they passionate about? That kind of thing. So thank you for asking it in that way. What brings me joy? Many things, but I was just reflecting on the experience I had yesterday was sunlight, sunshine. Being out in the sunlight, which we'll talk, I'm sure, more about in this podcast, but really being able to connect to nature, being present with nature. And, I was having an experience walking around a small forest near where I am yesterday and just feeling awe and wonder for nature, which for me is enabled by heat and sunshine, but also being able to walk, take your shoes off, walk barefoot in the forest and really connect to it. And that not only allows me to feel psychologically calm, but also physiologically calm in my body and connect to my heart a lot more. And so yesterday was a big day of that for me. So yeah, I come to this conversation full of joy.
Oh, I love that. You basically get up to get into the sun every single morning. That basically just summarizes you in a tea of what your purpose is now. But I also, second question, because I feel like this kind of does encapsulate you in a way, is like what your star sign is and your profile in human design. So I know your what they are, but could you explain to the listeners?
I can probably tell the listeners what they are. I probably wouldn't be. I think you'll have to explain what they are. But
well, I'm not an expert, but I have like a very like big interest in this, so I do a lot of in-depth rabbit holes.
Well, I'll label myself and then I'll hand over to you for the diagnosis. But my astrological birth chart is highly Aquarian. That's by far the dominant energy. My sun is in Aquarius. My moon is in Aquarius. My rising sign is in Pisces. Human design, I know even less about than astrology, but I am a manifesting generator.
Yes, you are.
3 out of 5.
3 out of 5. A 3-5.
60%.
I
I don't know
love
what that
this.
means, but
No, but this is brilliant because some people don't know what human design is. So if you are out there and you don't know, you're like, what is he talking about? Human design is a modality, is another form of finding out who we are designed to be, and we all have an energetic blueprint here, of why we've been brought to Earth. And there are 5 different energy types. So we've got the generators, manifesting generators, projectors, manifestors, and reflectors. So Jay is a manifesting generator 3-5 and a martyr heretic. And your right angle cross of explanation is your life incarnation cross of why you've been brought here to this earth. And the numbers for that are 49, 4, 43, and 23. Now, this is to explain things in a way that gets people to take action. You are designed to be a resilient, magnetic, and transformative force. Your life is a grand experiment in discovering what works and, more importantly, what doesn't work, ultimately allowing you to share actionable insights that challenge the status quo. And that 5 line, so that 3 line is similar to mine. So I'm a 1-3 projector. The 1 line is going in depth about learning of a topic or lots of fascinations, and wanting to know all the information. And the 3 line is the trial and error. So you have the 3 line, which sounds about right with some of the stuff that we're going to talk about now of how you found your purpose, and what happened with your autoimmune illness. And the 5 line is that you carry this natural projection field where others look to you for the solution, for the practical solutions. And so they often see you as like the leader or the savior. So you're here to teach, influence, and offer practical solutions to the collective, which I feel is very on brand on what you're doing. So how does that relate to you?
yeah, I mean, it resonates for sure. It's a humbling role that I find myself in these days, able to share insights and wisdom around health to people and watch it, transform their lives very, very quickly.
Mm.
And so, yeah, it resonates, and it's humbling and beautiful to hear.
Jay, take us back to the beginning, before your illness with psoriasis and before your awakening. Who were you and what was life feeling like at the time then?
I think so. I would always describe myself as someone who's been on a spiritual path, a spiritual
Mm.
seeker. That's been true for my whole life.
So even when you were
And
a child?
yeah, even when I was
Oh,
a
wow.
child, I was, I'm Indian, Hindu by background. I was raised as in the Hindu tradition and faith, but I'd say much more on the more sort of idol worship, dogmatic side of Hinduism, which is probably more common in people's minds.
Mm.
That was how I was raised, and then I was actually very devout in that practice, and felt like I always had a connection to something higher, even when I was young. I then, of course, went through my hardcore scientific atheist phase, where I was like, nothing is alive, and I went through my complete, you
That's
know,
like when we first met, and I was like, I'm an atheist.
yeah, the reductive materialism really, really got a hold of me. And I have since emerged from that into a much more open, let's say, much more panpsychist view
Mm.
of the world. And a lot of that was driven by the illness and experience with autoimmune chronic health conditions, as you mentioned. So I think I've had many little moments in my life of sort of, you kind of accelerate in your kind of consciousness journey, some of them through hardships, through deaths, through breakups, but none as severe and extreme as what I went through over this sort of 3 or 4 year period. Life before this was very intense professionally. I have always had very high flying, high growth careers. Most recently in AI as the CFO of an AI startup based in London, using AI to build self driving cars. So a very, very techy and futuristic but very high growth AI journey. Before that, my background was in finance, in mergers and acquisitions, and I had a very quite intense but quite successful academic career before that. So my life was typified by this very intense, outwardly pushing yang,
Mm.
you know, um, outlook and approach to life. And it was highly successful, right? And it was highly effective at, career success and power and financial success and all of these things. But then my health gave out on me, and the universe invited me. I was going to say gently invited me. There was nothing gentle about it, but it just pointed me in the direction that I needed to go in. And I can sit here as a much more open, connected, embodied, in tune individual, which was I didn't realize this, but was severely lacking from my life beforehand.
Yeah, you experienced some severe autoimmune psoriasis that took over your body and life. So can you share a little bit about that period and what that felt like, and not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually? What did that do to you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So this was around 2022. It was really the result of a number of different lifestyle factors, mostly pertaining to stress. Okay, so I was in an extremely stressful job and working environment, as I mentioned. I was also in a very stressful relationship, quite a toxic relationship romantically, and this was off the back of COVID and all the lockdowns in COVID, which I have come to understand as also being important in this story, because I had spent almost 2 years indoors, which will become relevant in this conversation. But the combination of these factors resulted in the very sudden onset of psoriasis. Now, psoriasis is a very common condition that many people, probably even listening to this, would identify with or have passed through phases in their life. It's a skin condition similar to eczema or dermatitis, where you develop very itchy, painful sores, plaques, and sort of welts all around your body. It's a very common condition that many people have minor forms of, but I developed an extremely aggressive version of, where, within just a few months, I went from never having had any signs of psoriasis to being completely covered. Every square inch of my body was covered in psoriasis. And I would watch every day as it got worse and worse and worse. Typically, psoriasis, like other autoimmune conditions, sort of ebbs and flows. It sort of flares up and flares down, but mine never behaved like that. It just seemed to exponentially flare upwards. And it reached a point where I eventually couldn't get out of bed because I was in so much pain. I wouldn't be able to sleep through the night because it gets much worse at night. So I would wake up on fire. I would wake up with blood all over my pillow because of how much I'd be itching my scalp, psoriasis, and my body. It eventually dominated my entire life, such that I couldn't go to work, such that I couldn't maintain romantic or even relational dynamics properly. And yeah, the universe just said, stop. This stops now. And I went on just to comment on the kind of emotional aspect of it, I was broken. This is by far the worst thing that has ever happened to me, the worst period in my life. Not only did I have these other stresses, but then the condition becomes a stressor in and of itself. And then I worked very hard to try and appease the other stresses. I left my job. I left that relationship. I left my housing environment, but I still couldn't find healing. I still couldn't find balance. And so I went on a very typical journey that most people with chronic health conditions will go on, which is that you go to your doctor, right? And your doctor, your allopathic doctor, will basically shrug their shoulders at you and say, you have an autoimmune condition, you have a chronic condition. We don't know why it arises. It's probably genetic. Someone in your family probably has it. And there's nothing you can do. You can take steroids forever, or you can take immunosuppressants forever, which means that you will come in and you will receive an injection from us every month for the rest of your life. And we will shut down a part of your immune system. Okay. These are the treatments for autoimmune conditions. And just to explain to your listeners what an autoimmune condition is, this is when your immune system attacks itself. Okay. It attacks yourself. And there are many different types of autoimmune conditions. They're also very common today. More than 20% of Americans have an autoimmune condition. This can be something like psoriasis. It can be Hashimoto's thyroiditis, when the immune system attacks the thyroid. It can be irritable bowel disease, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease. This is when the immune system attacks the digestive tract. It can be... there's many different types of autoimmune condition. It can even be allergies. Allergic rhinitis can be autoimmune. And these conditions for me had a very interesting spiritual significance, right? Because I was there thinking, well, what does it mean for your immune system to lose the ability to differentiate between self and not self, right? How unnatural must this be? And it was really, the experience I had with allopathic medicine, which said there was nothing I could do, plus these sort of reflections on this condition that I had that really sent me down a completely different way of trying to deal with this condition, which kickstarted a very long journey that brings us eventually to this podcast.
Was there a specific moment or insight? You said like you had the breakup, you left the job, but was there a specific moment there before that where you were like, it was like a wake up call for you, like you realized that this path that you're heading on is just not where you can be anymore? Like, what happened for you in that moment to be like, right, I cannot do this anymore. I need to find some sort of healing. What was that specific moment for you?
I had a couple of them. One, which was very powerful, was actually in the medical appointment, the first medical appointment I had, where a dermatologist in London was so nonchalant and just said, you've got psoriasis. There's no cure. And you have it forever. And in that moment, I describe it as a sacred no that just, it wasn't me speaking that no. When
what
she
was
finished
it, your
her
body?
sentence, it just came out.
You said no?
I said no, yes.
Oh.
When she said you've got psoriasis, there's no cure and there's nothing you can do to cure it, I just said no and I put my hand up like that. It was like, but it wasn't me, because at this point in time, I didn't have any of the knowledge, anything close to the knowledge that I have now. I wasn't even really that familiar with the mind-body connect, right?
Well, so the mind didn't, but your body
exactly.
knew. Yeah,
exactly. Cognitively, I had no cognitive grounding to substantiate the statement of no, right?
But your body physically went no.
Correct.
Yeah,
exactly. It was just it was a rejection of the label and a rejection of the diagnosis. So that was a big moment where it was something was speaking through me and moving through me, saying that this is not the way, that there is another way and I will find another way. But I had absolutely no idea what that path was. And I would say the second moment was after we spoke about ISTA. We've spoken about ISTA a lot. ISTA is a mystery school which kind of blends together aspects of Tantra and shamanism into a very unique curriculum, let's say. And a big part of that curriculum is developing a mind-body connection. And when it became clear to me that there was a mind-body connection, the next part was, okay, well, how do I develop this mind-body connection to try and understand what is actually happening in my body?
Mhm.
And following the ISTA training, I was able to develop for the first time, I was able to listen, consciously for the first time and really tune into my nervous system, which we'll talk a lot about today. But I was after that able to realize what certain dynamics and environments were doing to my system. And actually, this had been happening the whole time. To my shock, I just wasn't aware of it. And once you become aware of your heart, for example, and you can actually feel your heartbeat and how it changes in different situations, you have moments of oh my gosh, I can't believe my heart rate is getting triggered by this situation. Has this been happening the whole time?
Mm.
Right? This kind of realization that came much later in that year, but those were the moments where I realized actually I can't work in this environment anymore. I can't work in this way anymore, and something needs to change.
I love that. Yes, connecting to the heart is something that I bang on about in this podcast. If we follow our heart and intuition, it will lead us to our purpose. So can you tell me a little bit more about that then? So when you started to listen to your body, you listened to your heart, you followed that call, where did that lead you then in your journey?
Mm-hmm. I started to listen to my body. I started to learn a lot about, well, actually the first place I went when I left that medical appointment, the first place I went to begin my research journey was actually physics. It was quantum physics, because I have been a lifelong science nerd, and I sort of thought, well, if I can try and understand reality at the most fundamental level, perhaps I can then build up a picture that will allow me to support this condition in some way.
How did that connect though with the appointment to physics? Like, I would not be like, oh, I'm going to study physics now. Like, why did your brain do that?
Because my brain also, as a coping mechanism, defaults
Right.
to scientific academia.
Same,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yeah.
like, why why was yours physics? Mine would have been like, let's look at the biology here. Yours went to physics. So,
Yeah, I think because I had effectively just been in front of a biologist, right? Okay, doctors are
okay.
not
So you're like,
quite biologists. I
so
was like,
the
yeah,
biology didn't work, so let's go to physics.
yeah. I was like, forget about them. They can't help me. I need to go deep. I need to find the deeper nerds
Right.
who can help. But I've always found scientific academia very soothing, right,
Mm,
to my system. So when I was in this situation of thinking, wow, no one within the established paradigm that I've been conditioned to look to in this moment is going to help me. So I have to help myself. And if I understand absolutely everything, here's another pattern. If I understand absolutely everything with my brain, then I will, live or survive. Okay.
that's
And
literally one of my my shadows too. I need all the knowledge.
exactly.
Yeah.
And knowledge is important, right? It is important, but the embodiment of that knowledge was
Mm,
equally important in this journey. So I went down the quantum physics route, and let's be honest, nobody on this glorious earth can tell you confidently that they understand quantum physics, right? Without lying to you or themselves. So we have to be very humble in the face of this discipline, because it really is the realm of magic. But I went down that path first, and then a lot of mind-body connect stuff as well. A la Dr. Gabor Mate was a big influence. Joe Dispenza,
mhm.
Dr. Joe Dispenza was a big influence. The quantum revolution in the sort of 1920s and 30s was a big influence. A lot of spiritual explorations in the Advaita Vedanta tradition, which brings us back to Hinduism, but now we're not talking about the dogmatic, idealistic form of Hinduism. We're talking about the more, let's say, original, authentic, non-dual form of Hinduism, right? This is a non-dualistic tradition versus a dualistic tradition that I was brought up under. And within that non-dualistic tradition, it aligns beautifully with quantum physics and other teachings from Eastern philosophy like Taoism, which is that you are a dreamer, right? You are the dreamer. And your conscious experience and consciousness in totality is not an emergent thing that emerges from the interplay of neurons in your brain. It is a fundamental property of the universe. And as a dreamer, it means you have a certain amount of agency over the dream that you choose to participate in. Okay? And so these were the sort of little threads of the weave that was spun. But ultimately, I went down the holistic route. I went through the dietary changes. I gave up gluten, dairy, and eggs to try and reduce inflammation. I did Ayurveda. I did Chinese medicine. I did purging treatments. I did nervous system work. So I did meditation and craniosacral and osteopathy. And honestly, you name it, I tried it. Right. Some very, very obscure things as well, which I shall not mention on this podcast. But I really tried everything. Right. And nothing really seemed to last. And
did you have any like moments where it was like, okay, it's healing a little bit now? Or...
I had one moment of quite dramatic healing.
Okay.
During an Ayurvedic purging treatment called the Panchakarma, which is an ancient Indian practice to kind of cleanse the body. And I did experience.
With ghee?
Ghee is they will fill you full of ghee. Yeah, they will put ghee wherever ghee will go.
Right.
And because in the Ayurvedic tradition, ghee is thought of as like a detergent, particularly like herbal ghee.
Yeah, we have that in my family culture too. So from the Iranian Persian heritage.
Yeah, so ghee seems to be a very powerful thing. And so during this purging treatment called Panchakarma, which I did in Kerala in India, it did get better, but then it came back.
So was it completely gone, like from your whole body, or were there?
I would say it largely disappeared visually.
Okay.
But the itch was still quite present. But it got a lot better, and that gave me a brief period of respite, but also a belief that I had healed, which was euphoric and amazing. But it came back a couple of months later, almost as vigorously as it had been before that. And so that was an even bigger emotional turmoil, right? Which is that you went through the fire, you achieved healing, or so you thought, and then you got plunged straight back into it. And so that's when I had effectively exhausted all options. I was despondent. I never gave up hope. I never gave up the belief. And belief is very important, that healing was possible and healing would come to me, and that this was just a phase. I kept saying to myself that night is just a phase, right? It is not a state of permanence. And so I kept that belief up. But my breakthrough came towards the end of 2024, when the universe finally allowed me the breakthrough that I needed, that has since shaped my life.
What if your team's biggest breakthrough came from within? At InnerVox, we create tailored workshops for corporate companies that unlock confidence, communication, and collaboration. We're not your typical training. Our workshops are dynamic, experiential, laughter-filled, and designed to create lasting transformation. We use creative techniques, performance psychology, and real human connection. We help your people build trust and express themselves and perform at their absolute best by listening to their intuition and their inner voice. Because when your people grow, your business also grows. Visit innervox.co.uk/corporate today and click the link in the description below. So you found it through quantum physics or biology?
Well, it was actually all of them, Melissa. It felt like the culmination of my entire life's worth of being a huge nerd and spiritual seeker, all culminated in in the solution. And effectively, I met very randomly in a cafe in Southall for...
Yes, but is it random?
Well, no, it's not random. Hence
Mm.
I talk about it quite specifically to you in this podcast. For those of you who know London, you may identify with how coincidental it is to meet someone in a cafe in Southall, particularly when you don't live anywhere near Southall. For that person to randomly start speaking to you at a time when you don't really want to speak to anyone. But this is what happened. I met a guy called Dan who just came up to me and started talking to me about what he did, which was he works in quantum biology. So here we are, right? The culmination of everything, where I was thinking that doesn't even sound like a real discipline, right? Because if you understand a bit about quantum mechanics, quantum biology sounds like an oxymoron, right? It sounds ironic because quantum coherence, which is the sort of state in which you can see quantum properties like superposition, can only really happen when in environments that are at absolute zero and effectively very still and dry, not in warm, wet, chaotic environments like in human cells. So even the word quantum biology, the phrase quantum biology, seems like it's made up. Let me tell you, it's not, right? But I hadn't learned that yet. So he tells me he works in quantum biology. He tells me he works in circadian rhythms, okay? And then I see him going outside and doing all kinds of weird things. Like he goes outside and he takes his glasses off and he looks at the sky. And I'm there thinking, this guy has lost it because he's like, this guy's a freak and I don't know what he's doing. But I was so curious. I was so curious as to what he was doing that I followed up with him, and he sent me down the rabbit hole where I must have listened to 100 podcasts, and I learned everything that I possibly could around circadian rhythms.
Mm.
Why was I so intrigued by this? Because of the concept of what they represent and what they mean. So many people listening to this will have heard the term circadian rhythm, but most people, inclusive of me at the time, won't know what they are. Perhaps you came across it in a biology class when you were younger, perhaps in a David Attenborough documentary at some point. But the circadian rhythms are the roughly 24-hour cycles that all life on Earth rely on to survive.
Mm.
It's important to point out there are many natural cycles that life on Earth relies on to survive. The lunar cycle is another one, right?
Mm.
Particularly not just in human beings, but in animals, in fish, in turtles, right? So the circadian rhythm is one of many natural rhythms and cycles that are fundamental in nature. But the circadian rhythms are those 24-hour cycles that most strongly govern the physiology of the human organism, right? And not only is this an interesting thing to think about, it actually completely reframes health and the philosophy that we can take to our health. And the reason being that when you learn about circadian rhythms and you learn that there are these fundamental 24-hour cycles that happen in the body, you understand that this concept of rhythm is fundamental to health. That health is actually not something that we do. It's something that emerges naturally when your body is aligned to biological rhythms. Why are biological rhythms important? Because the human organism, the human being, evolved in nature, okay? Over millions of years of evolution, we evolved in nature. We evolved outside. We were wanderers, hunters, gatherers. And even in more recent history, we were still a largely outdoor species. About 150 years ago, when electricity was invented and the light bulb, funnily enough, was invented, that completely changed. And the human organism moved indoors. And
Mm.
particularly today, we spend more than 95%, in most cases, more than 99% of our time indoors. And what happens if you take a fish out of the ocean and you put it in a tank? What happens when you take a higher order mammal and a more intelligent, or we think a more conscious mammal like a tiger or a whale, and you keep it in a zoo or you keep it in SeaWorld? The organism will start to degrade. It will start to degrade psychologically. It will start to degrade physiologically. And when we talk about animals and you talk about animal health and you talk about life expectancy or longevity, you would always talk about that in terms of, is the animal in captivity or is the animal in the wild? Right? Naturally, you would talk about the environment as a part of the animal's health, except we don't do that for humans. We don't acknowledge the human environment as important to human health. But guess what? Your physiology developed over millions of years in a stable natural environment. And now that we have completely removed ourselves from this natural environment, our body does not receive the environmental signals and biological cues that it needs to be in balance. And that is the root cause of this epidemic in chronic illness that we have as a species. That is the epidemic of our time. 74% of all deaths globally are a result of chronic conditions, not acute conditions anymore. As a society, we've largely solved acute infectious conditions with things like antibiotics. But what we really die from these days are chronic illnesses, neurodegenerative disease like Alzheimer's, cardiovascular disease, autoimmune disease, cancers. These are chronic illnesses. This is what kills people these days, and they fundamentally come from a disconnection from nature.
As you're speaking there, I just kept thinking about your incarnation cross, the right angle cross of explanation, and how you just explain it so beautifully, and it just makes total sense. It's so simplistic. We are not in our natural environment, in our natural habitat, as David Attenborough would say. The natural habitat of a human species is to be in the wild. That's literally what it is. We are supposed to be in the earth. We're supposed to be feet in the ground. We're not supposed to be indoors with these microphones and this light and this artificial technology that we have around us. Yeah, they're amazing and they're great tools for us, but we shouldn't be in front of them 24 hours a day. And so thank you for explaining that in such a beautiful, poetic way. It just makes total sense to me. And how you're speaking about reconnecting the human biology with the natural rhythms of the earth, it just feels like as a society, we've just forgotten so much of how to live naturally, of what our ancestors used to do and what we used to do in the ancient times. What do you feel will happen if we do not come back into alignment with those rhythms, of those natural rhythms? How drastic is it? Like, give us the figures.
It's extremely drastic. I can't stress that enough. So 74% of all deaths globally are chronic diseases, as I just mentioned. Now, of course, health is multifaceted, right? Of course, circadian rhythms are not the only driver of chronic diseases globally, right? Let's be clear about that. But in order to answer this question, it's important to really understand and reframe where circadian rhythms sit in the mechanistic hierarchy of your body. What I mean by that is, why are circadian rhythms important? They're important because your body is not a static unit, okay? It is not a fixed thing that is static and doesn't change and move through time. Your body is constantly going through cycles. Every process in your body is based on a cyclical and rhythmic pattern, okay? Up to 80% of genes that encode proteins follow 24-hour rhythms in expression, okay? What that means is your body is very intelligent, okay? It's doing millions of things all of the time, most of which we have no idea how the body is actually doing this and how it all works, right? We've got to be humble about that. We've done a pretty good job in modern medicine at decoding that. But for the most part, the body's intelligence is far superior to anything we've been able to decode. And it is managing thousands, if not millions, of cyclical processes all day. I'll give you examples, right? Your body is not always producing the hormones of sleep, right? It will do this in the evening when you are about to go to sleep. But in the day, when it needs you to be active, it's not producing sleep hormones, or it shouldn't be producing sleep hormones. What it should be doing is producing activity hormones like cortisol, okay? Because that's what gets you out of bed and gets you moving. So the rhythm between cortisol and melatonin, one of the sleep hormones, is a very important rhythm to understand, and is a good example that shows, the body is not always doing the same thing. Your digestive rhythms also. Your body is not always digesting food. It will start to digest food just before you eat, in the anticipation of food, and then it will digest food as you eat. But when you're not eating, when you're sleeping, for example, it's not supposed to be digesting food, right? It's supposed to be using that energy for apoptosis, cellular repair and regeneration. So your body is coordinating many, many cyclical processes, okay? But what circadian rhythms really do at their most fundamental level is they give your body a concept of time, okay? And time is critically important if you're trying to manage many cyclical and rhythmic processes, okay? So being misaligned circadially is akin to you taking a flight to India and not setting your clock when you arrive in India, which means that your body, Melissa, would be out of sync with the natural time of India. So if you were not to set that watch, you've got no hope of having any kind of productive trip at all, right? Whether you have meetings, engagements, whatever. If you haven't set your clock, there's no hope. So what circadian alignment does is it sets that clock so the processes can happen when they're supposed to be. You asked, how severe is this? Well, it's very severe from a chronic disease standpoint, as we've just mentioned. It's very severe from a nervous system standpoint, because increasingly in the world that we live in, an extremely important aspect of health and actually of freedom is sovereignty over your nervous system. Because you may try and have all the different forms of sovereignty that you want. You may try and develop financial sovereignty through an income or Bitcoin. You may try and develop sovereignty of thought through free thinking or psychedelic experiences. You may try and develop sovereignty of food by growing your own food and regenerative agriculture. But in my opinion, none of that matters if you don't have sovereignty over your nervous system, because your nervous system is the interface through which you relate to the world. It's the interface through which the world affects you. And it governs every moment of your waking experience. And so if your nervous system is not regulated, your experience of life is distorted. And you naturally operate from the perspective of separation. Because the human organism is wired that if I'm in fight or flight, if I'm in sympathetic overdrive, so my stress part of the nervous system is in overdrive, wholeness and connectedness is not important, right? Running away is important. Fight, flight, freeze is important. And you look around in the world today and all the hostilities that seem to be surrounding us, they're all born of the thought pattern of separation. Mm-hmm. Whereas if your system is regulated, if your nervous system can oscillate properly between, parasympathetic dominance and sympathetic activation, then we can operate from a place of connectedness and wholeness. So this is a big problem from a chronic health standpoint. This is $10 trillion that are spent every year on chronic health. It's down, it relates to a fundamental aspect of personal sovereignty and freedom. And it relates to a very important spiritual evolution and unfolding that can only happen if your nervous system is regulated. And if you live in an environment that you did not design electromagnetically, we'll come on, I'm sure, to what that means. But if you do not live in a biologically coherent environment, you cannot say that your nervous system is properly regulated. It is impossible to make that statement. And this is why circadian rhythms and environmental health is so important.
Yes, and I think a lot of people are going about their day, not actually actively realizing and having the awareness that they are living in fight or flight sympathetic state. So what things could you say to the listener? For example, one of the articles that you've written, you're also a writer, and you write some beautiful things, and The Universe is Alive is one of them, which was one of the first ones that you released, which I absolutely loved because it was so accurate to where I was at when I was reading it and of how I thought about what my beliefs were of what we are all connected and we are one with the universe. Can you explain to us what basically that article in a nutshell of how it is so important for us to realize when we are in sympathetic state, and how we can come back to regulation and come back into that parasympathetic down-regulated state?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure, absolutely. I'll start with the the article and the relevance for the conversation that we're having. And maybe in order to do that, I'll just shine a little light, no pun intended, on the mechanism of the circadian rhythm. But a lot of people will say to me when I share this information that they get it, right? It makes sense that the human organism no longer lives in the environment that it evolved in. And it makes sense that that is harming the organism, right? And particularly in my long search for balance, right? I felt like I had finally arrived at what balance was. And balance, it's actually not balance in the static sense. It's balance in a ongoing sense, a dynamic sense, which is actually rhythm, or more specifically, coherence, right? Coherence is a word that it feels like it's having its moment, right? Particularly in spiritual spaces and also medical spaces. But what does coherence actually mean? Coherence is a systems engineering term, and it effectively, a physics term more fundamentally, and it effectively means a system that is organized and ordered through time. Okay, so people will hear this and understand it, but will say, well, I can't live outside, right? I'm not going to move my life outside. I still have to live in a house and work in an office and all these kinds of things. And that's absolutely true. This is not about getting people to move to, a beach or the mountainside, right? For sure, you should spend as much time in nature and as much time outside as you possibly can. But let's be real about where the world in which we live in and how people's responsibilities. So what the circadian science does is it says, well, what is it about the environment that actually interacts with your physiology, right? We've said it's nature and it's being outside, but specifically, what is it about being outside that drives your biology? And it turns out that the single most important thing that drives the human circadian system, and therefore is the fundamental conductor of your body and all its processes, is light. Okay. And when we change our relationship to light, both natural light and artificial light, that's when we start to see major change in the body. So when the human organism is exposed to natural light, the natural light of the sun, it sets and coordinates all of the processes in the body. Okay? And particularly, I tell people every sunrise and sunset is what we should be watching, right? That is the, let's say, the hardcore circadian
That's the
practice.
TV we really should be watching, is the sunset and the
Well, there you
sunrise.
go. There's a reason, Melissa, that watching a sunset will never get boring, right? It will never not relax you. Try as you might to be stressed, because your body is wired to be relaxed by sunset light because of the composition of that light. And the beautiful significance of this for me in a sort of spiritual sense and relating to the article is that the circadian science shows us fundamentally and scientifically. In fact, the Nobel Prize was given in 2017 to the scientists who uncovered the molecular mechanism of the circadian rhythm. So this is Nobel Prize winning science showing you that we are not separate from the universe. We are not separate from nature. Your body requires going outside and connecting with light in order to be a normally functioning human being. And for me, that's just the most humbling, beautiful takeaway from all this. And that too, I mean, when we, I think you asked about the article. The article is broadly about the universe being alive, right? It's very much a description of what we call panpsychism in sort of modern philosophical thought, and it really challenges this notion that we've had for the last 500 years that science and soul are, or science and spirit are different domains, right? That the universe is dead and we inhabit this sort of random universe of moving parts, right? Where stuff just happens by randomness. And the most fundamental kind of rebuttal that I give to that is that it would take an infinite amount of that randomness, basically, for this conversation to be happening. Think about what's brought us to this position, Melissa, to be having this podcast. Yeah. The Big Bang happened. The Great Inflation happened. The plasma cooled and condensed into planets. Life emerged. Consciousness emerged. Our parents met. And then we met in Bali. And here we are. It was, there's... by the own logic of a reductive materialist who ascribes outcomes based on probability, the outcome of this interaction is effectively zero. I mean, it is zero, right? That means the possibility of every moment in your waking life and in your sleeping life is zero. It is impossible for that to be happening. And what do we call things that seem impossible but happen anyway? We call it magic.
Magic.
And that's the world we live in.
Yes, I find it so special how we met. We were both from London. We met in Bali. We were like, where are you from? Oh, where are you from? Oh, I literally was working there like 10 days ago. Magic. Thank you for that definition on magic. So on more magic, your book, The Story of Light, explores light as the foundation of life and consciousness. Can you share what that means and so how light influences us beyond what we can see?
Yeah, absolutely. So much I can say about this. So yes, this is a book that I'm working on. It's not out yet, but it aligns to the writings that I post on Substack and very much how my life is oriented. There's many aspects to the story. The fundamental story is one of personal freedom, right? Both when it comes to health more generally and also the health of the nervous system, as we've spoken about, because I view this as extremely spiritually significant if we have any hope of some kind of evolution in thought or consciousness as a species that allows us to come back to wholeness and connectedness instead of separation. In my mind, if we have any hope of achieving that, we need to bring our physiology into the state that it can actually inhabit that thought pattern and that new reality. Why is light important? Well, we've talked about how light regulates your entire physiology and your nervous system and allows you it allows coherence to emerge within you and between you and your environment. But light is also a fundamental thing in the universe. And what it does is it carries information, right? Light effectively enables the conscious experience that you're even having to happen in the first place. What do I mean by that? Light forms a part of what we call the electromagnetic spectrum, okay? Generally, what people mean when they say the word light is they mean the visible part of the electromagnetic spectrum, okay? So this is the part that you can see. And people might know this because it's described by the colors of the rainbow, right? It's the acronym I use is Richard of York gave battle in vain, right? So it's from red all the way to violet. Now, the visible, and remember, the visible part of the electromagnetic spectrum it makes up your entire experience of life.
Mm.
Everything that you see, you can only see because visible light is being reflected into your eye.
Mm.
Everything that you see, hear, smell, and taste is only also possible because of electrical signals, right? Which form part of the electromagnetic spectrum also, right? But particularly visible light and the sense of seeing, we are only seeing, if we're only seeing visible light, we are only seeing about somewhere between a trillionth and a billionth of reality.
Mm.
Right? Let's let that sink in for a second. Everything that you know, that we know, feel, and experience and believe to be true makes up a trillionth of the information that is out there. Which means that if you could see all of the light, you would be overwhelmed by the Wi-Fi, the Bluetooth, the radio waves, the microwaves, the cosmic rays coming from the sun and other galaxies to pass through your body and out the other side. Neutrinos that are constantly firing and moving through you at all times. We would be overwhelmed with the amount of information that's actually coming through, right? And so light is not this thing that we just use for illuminance. It is a fundamental force in the universe. In fact, all of matter, everything that you believe, that you identify as matter, as real, as solid, is and only is the interaction of electromagnetic fields, which comprise most of the quote unquote empty space of atoms. And so what the story of light explores is not just the health implications of aligning your body to light, but an understanding of what light actually is, how light behaves as a vector of consciousness, allowing conscious experience and access to consciousness to be enabled by your mind and the human body and heart, but also how it might hold the keys informationally if we can open ourselves up to it. That may lead us towards a brighter, more enlightened future.
My mind's like a little bit blown. I'll tell you why. Because I have questions that I want to ask you. And every single question that I have has either been answered first before me asking it, or you've left the answer at a place where I can then ask my next question so beautifully. It's
Beautiful.
almost as if like it's all been orchestrated somehow by something bigger than us. But I just find that so fascinating because it keeps happening like that in every single one of my podcasts. And just the amount of information that you've given us today on light, on consciousness, on rhythms and circadian rhythms and the natural cycles of the earth, it is just so invaluable. And I want you to speak a little bit about that mission for InRhythm and what is the meaning behind it. What's the mission behind building this to help others realign with nature?
Yeah, absolutely. So when it was clear that my skin was healing, and just to give the listeners a little bit of context, so once I found out about circadian rhythms, I had this cosmic meeting with Dan. I then started to live circadially. I took myself. This was winter in the UK, which
Is
is
that
not
a
a great
word, circadially?
circadially. Yeah.
Wow, love that. I was like, oh, have you just made that up?
Yeah. So I took myself to a hot country where it was a bit easier to do this, and I started living according to circadian principles. So what does that actually mean for your listeners? Because we've been a bit analogous about it. Effectively, it means changing your relationship to light. Okay, and there's a relatively easy to follow protocol, which I did not invent, right? This is a fairly standard circadian protocol, but we did develop the acronym that goes with it, just so it's easier to land in people's minds. So I'll share it here, and I'll let you know that once I started living like this, I watched in disbelief every single day as all of the psoriasis disappeared from my body over the course of about 6 weeks for most of that healing. Not just psoriasis, but chronic allergies that I used to have, eventually nervous system regulation and muscular release that we were talking about recently. I am not exaggerating when I say that changing my life to live according to circadian principles has been the single most impactful thing that I have ever done in my life, physically, biologically, mentally, and spiritually. The basic protocol is this. It spells the word lighter. Okay.
Nice.
Yeah, right. Worked hard on that one. I was like, how do I make this fit the word light? So some of it is a little janky in how it fits, but it will hopefully help you remember it. But spells the word lighter. L, light first thing in the morning. When you wake up, don't turn on any lights. Don't look at your phone. Go outside and allow natural light to enter your eye first thing in the morning. Do not look directly at the sun. You never need to look directly at the sun. Sometimes it's safe to do so, of course, around sunrise and sunset, but generally speaking, please do not look at the sun. But go outside in the morning. And what that does is it sets that body clock into environmental time, and it gives your body the wake up signal. Okay, it's morning time. So I should start doing all of the processes, which are morning processes, like digestion, like bowel movements, like cortisol production, like all of these things that get you going. Okay.
And how long would you say that we would need to go outside for?
If it's sunny, 10, 15 minutes, really not very long. It works very, very quickly. In fact, if you do this on a sunny day, you will wake up, right? You will wake up once you go outside. So I don't drink caffeine anymore because the sun gives me the best type of sustainable energy, right? So if it's sunny, 10, 15 minutes. If it's not sunny, you need a bit longer. You should aim for 30 minutes, okay? But it's really not a lot. And also to add before I finish the whole protocol, what I'm going to share might sound like a lot, but it really isn't, because you can stack these habits on top of each other. And really this should take an hour and a half in your day, but that to spread out across your day, not in one chunk. So L is light first thing in the morning. I is include UVA. What's UVA? UVA is the first wavelength of ultraviolet light, okay? And it emerges about an hour, hour and a half after sunrise. The G is gather UVB, which is the second wavelength of ultraviolet light that comes out just before the afternoon. Now, what do I mean by include and gather? All I mean is go outside. Go outside, and if it's sunny, go on a walk for 15 minutes at these specific times of day to gather that light in your eye and on your skin. Expose as much of your skin as you can and is socially acceptable in the environment that you're in. If you can be naked, please be naked. If you can't, do what you can. And make sure you access that light at the right time. Now, there is an app called the Circadian app, which will tell you the times of day and the location that you're in, where these certain wavelengths of light come out. Because ultimately what we're trying to do here is we're trying to think about light like food. Just like you would say, oh, I need to get my fiber or my protein, right? You must say, I need to get my UVA, I need to get my UVB. Okay? So L, light first thing in the morning. I, include UVA. G, gather UVB. H is harness evening light, where if the same thing that you did in the morning, you have to do in the evening around sunset, because that is now going to give your body the relaxing wind down signal. This is why sunsets relax you, because they start to cue the production of melatonin and all your relaxation chemicals for nightly wind down. So you must get your sunset light. And after that, there is a T, which is turn off Allen. Okay, what's Allen? Allen is an industry term, but it means artificial light at night. But Allen's not our friend. We don't like Allen. Okay, because what it means is that once you've done all these lovely light behaviors in the day, once you come back inside, you need to be mindful around the light that you're exposed to, right? Because your body is going to respond to light no matter what time of day it is, right? And no matter what type of light it is. What that means is when you come back inside, you need to be around natural light sources or health optimized light sources. Why? Because most artificial lighting, 99% of common LED lighting in homes and in built environments, is toxic to human health because it is enriched with blue light, short wavelength light, that is very stimulating to the nervous system. It is devoid of red and infrared light, which in nature normally balances the impact of this higher energy blue light. Modern LED lighting also flickers, okay, which most people may not be aware of, but perhaps you've had the example, the example of you've taken a video of a screen or some lights, and then you watch the video and you can see the tears across the screen, and you think, I didn't see that. What is that? Yeah. What's happening there is your camera is picking up the flicker that is flickering so fast that it is below your visual perception, but it is triggering your nervous system. Okay. So when we come indoors, typically we have these blue enriched, devoid of long wavelengths, flickering lights that do not change, right? Your home lights only have one setting for the most part, whereas the sun does change. It's a dynamically changing system. So when you come back inside, you need to be mindful of this type of light. And this is the kind of light that my company InRhythm develops, right? So we have developed a light bulb, which we can talk a little bit more about, but a light bulb that deals with these problems, that can support your circadian rhythms once you, at all times of day, but particularly once you come back inside.
So these natural sources of light, we have things like candles or
candles,
fire.
Correct. Candlelight is great. Firelight is great. Why is candlelight relaxing? Why has it always been relaxing? Why is firelight relaxing? Because they're rich in red and infrared wavelengths of light that down-regulate your nervous system, right? But have been I don't know about intentionally, but they've been intentionally removed from common LED lighting for, largely for cost and efficiency purposes. But they have resulted in very artificial lighting environments indoors. I think about this as processed lighting. right? Like processed food. It's artificial. It's junk lighting.
Yeah, that's a good way of explaining it.
Mm. And people will be familiar with the impact of light on the body, right? Everybody listening to this podcast has had this experience. You wake up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom. You go to the bathroom, you turn the light on, and what happens? You wake up, right? You wake up in the bathroom, you get back into bed, and you're lying looking at the ceiling, and it takes you some time to go to bed. Everybody on earth has had that experience.
Yeah.
Why
I do
does
not
that
turn
happen?
on the
Yeah.
light if I need to go to the
Exactly,
toilet.
which is the
Yeah.
main feedback that people say. Well, oh yeah, obviously I don't turn the light on. And it's like, well, firstly, why does that happen? Right? It happens because you're around a blue enriched, bright, flickering light. Guess what? That doesn't happen if you're around a dim, red enhanced, infrared enhanced light. Right? So if you're around the better sleep bulb on the night setting, which is the consumer product that we have, you do not wake up. Right? If you're using in your bathroom at that time. So what I often find when we talk about this is people can intuitively relate. There's not a lot of convincing that has to happen when you talk about circadian rhythms. It's more a remembering that I experience through people, where something very deep and innate in them is like, oh yeah, I get this. Okay. And so just to round off the protocol, we've done LIGHT and then the E and the R. The E is earthing or grounding, which you mentioned before. It's about connecting your bare skin to natural surfaces, which actually allows for electron exchange within your body. Electrons are the key to health. And then the R is regular earlier meal timings. Okay, so eating food within a defined window. Generally, we advocate for a 10-hour window. So this is called intermittent fasting also. Allows your body that rest period from constant digestion. But most importantly, left shift all of your meals. Have them earlier in the day. So eat within an hour and a half of waking up, and finish eating at least 3 hours before you go to sleep, because these are important timing cues for your body also. Now, this sounds like a lot. I promise you it's not, because think about it. If I can have my breakfast outside with my feet on the ground,
Yeah.
I've knocked off 3 of them.
But also,
one, right?
just to cut in there, there is so much scientific evidence of having our meals times within that specific time frame of being so much more beneficial to us, and our health and our regulation and our digestive system. So it just makes sense. And yes, you can stack all of those things onto each other. I do that as well. I go outside and eat my breakfast. I do put my feet on the floor, grounding. So there's 3 things there. And I like to do my morning walk, and then that's getting my exercise in the morning as well. So yeah, thank you for that acronym. That's profound stuff that we've now got for everyone listening. That's wonderful. I just wanted to touch, do we want to talk about anything else before we end? Is there anything you want to talk about?
I'll just share a little bit more about how that, I guess, relates to InRhythm and what we're actually building. Because the protocol that I told you, you're right, is very powerful, will transform people's lives. It will transform whoever's listening to this and struggles with sleep. It will transform your sleep very, very quickly, right? Sleep is the fastest thing that changes, because the sleep-wake cycle is highly circadian influence. So it will really impact your sleep. It will improve your nervous system regulated. It will allow your nervous system to actually be regulated. It will bring down inflammation dramatically in the body, and generally put you into the best health. But here's the thing that we also learned. Information is only one part of this, right? Because fundamentally, the problem that most people have is not information, it's behavior change, okay? Everybody in the world knows that you should eat healthy, right? Very few people actually do it. And so we can tell people this whole protocol. I hope people do it, but the truth is people are busy, right? And they have their own patterns and their own responsibilities. And so sometimes they don't. So we were asking ourselves as a business, and just to add that context, as I was healing, I got back in touch with Dan, who told me about this, who has been a circadian health coach for 10 years, who is now my co-founder. So we lead this charge together. And we decided that we needed to meet people where they were and not where we wanted them to be, right? And ultimately where people are is indoors, right? Under bad lighting and disconnected from the biological rhythm from where they came, and from where their body from what their body requires to survive. And so we decided to build biologically coherent indoor environments using light. So we developed the Better Sleep bulb, and which is works based off a lighting architecture that we've developed, which, as I mentioned, adds red and infrared light back into the light bulb. It's the first bulb that does that. It does not flicker. It changes dynamically through the day. So it has a day, evening, and night setting. So it supports your rhythms during the day, the evening, and also the night to support you into nervous system wind down and sleep. And our vision is, the next layer of civilizational infrastructure, right? Because what happens roughly once every 100 years is society realizes that something in the environment is wrong. Either something is absent that shouldn't be absent, or something is present that shouldn't be present. Right? An example of this is clean water sanitation in the 1850s, where we realized that pathogens in water were making people sick, giving them cholera. Well, we came together as a civilization and we built infrastructure. We built water sanitation, which just happens quietly in the background and supported a 20-year increase in life expectancy. And so this is a once in a generation event. We believe it's happening in light and indoor environments. We believe that the next layer of infrastructure will be biologically coherent environments where we bring the wisdom of nature indoors to support people's health. And my ultimate view is not only would we support people's health, but if environments can be made to be coherent, electromagnetically coherent, then we can bring the human physiology into coherence, which means that the human system is vibrating or oscillating in tune with its environment, in tune with itself at its most deepest level. Perhaps then this can impact how we communicate and how we relate to each other. Perhaps that can become coherent, and perhaps we have a chance at a fundamental shift in the collective consciousness towards a much more whole and connected frequency and place. And that is my ultimate spiritual mission in my life, with InRhythm and with the story of light.
Yes, this bulb which you have developed, I think is revolutionary. And I genuinely think it's going to be the new Thomas Edison. You are the new Thomas Edison. And we are going to have these bulbs every single place in our homes, in our workplace, in environments. I genuinely see that, Jay. I can see how necessary and needed it is for us. And with everything that you've spoken about today as well, why as well, because it's just so simply evident and clear that we need this. And as you said, meeting us where we're at now, because a lot of the population aren't even aware of this and maybe don't even know what circadian rhythm even is. So thank you for explaining all of that. I actually had a question about the bulb, and you said that it has 3 settings. So you have the day, the evening, and the night setting. What is the difference, say, for example, if we were using because we have these alarm clocks, which were, they have the light that wakes us up with the sun, but this bulb specifically isn't necessarily an alarm clock, but it's just a light which will go with the time zone that you're in, I presume. What's the difference between using that and, say, a lamp that changes colors, and you put it on, say, yellow, and then in the night you put it on red? Because that's what I do when I go to sleep.
Yeah, absolutely. So those can help to an extent, but here's where they don't stack up in the same way. The first thing just to point out is that the settings on the bulb are changed manually. So all you do is you just turn your light switch on and off, your wall switch or your lamp switch or whatever, and it will toggle through the settings from day to evening to night. So the first thing, there are a lot of these alarm clocks out there that, will become sort of red in the morning to wake you up. And that's a great start. The problem is that most of these lights, in fact, none of the lights have infrared light within them. Okay. And infrared light is actually what makes up more than half of sunlight. Okay. So if you're trying to replicate natural light in any way, if there is no infrared light and there's not, significant amounts of red light as well, that light source is not going anywhere close to any kind of natural replication. That's the first thing. The second thing is, unless a lighting provider can show you the spectral chart of the light that's being emitted, which is effectively a graph that shows you the peaks and troughs of different colors.
Which you have on your website as well.
Yeah, which we've got on the website, so you can see all the spectral readings there and how they compare to natural light sources and existing artificial light sources. Unless a lighting provider can show you that for their product, you should not rely on that lighting source for health purposes. If your objective is I'm having a party and I want some red lights, then sure, you use any red light that you want. If your objective is I want to support my health, you need to see the spectral reading, or you need to have evidence of that spectral reading, because lights that appear red can also leak blue and green light. So if you buy a very cheap bulb off Amazon, it can be made to look red through RGB settings, but still leak light that is what we call melanopically active. So it triggers the pigment in your eye that sets your circadian rhythms. Lastly, these types of lights don't typically change throughout the day. They might just support you at one specific time of day, and they also flicker unless drivers have been specifically designed such to remove that flicker from the device, which is not generally the case for 99.9% of LEDs. So I'd say they're a good start, right? Because they're not this like harsh overhead ceiling light that most of us have in our ceilings. But in terms of supporting health, there's a lot of nuance that needs to be addressed, which is why we developed the better sleep bulb and the underlying architecture below it.
Amazing. So fascinating. Okay, well, we all need to get this bulb then. So where can people find out more about you and the amazing offerings and work that you're doing in the world?
Just if people want to follow the journey or learn more, InRhythm.earth on Instagram. We'll follow InRhythm and everything the company does, and new products and education, things like that. My Story of Light Instagram is the Story of Light _official. I also have a page on Substack called The Story of Light, where you can follow the kind of most recent thinking and philosophy around this and the journey. And yeah, would love to connect with as many people as possible. Let me know whether these principles resonate, whether they impact your life, and let's move through this together.
So some questions that I ask all my guests before we end the podcast are, what's one piece of advice that you'd give someone who's lost and trying to find their purpose?
Let me sit with that one for a second. Follow your excitement.
Love that. And what's one takeaway that you want the listener to leave with today? Because we've had so many today. What's one thing that you want them to one thing that they need to know?
Optimal health is your birthright.
Yeah.
Regulating a nervous system is your birthright. These states, a regulated nervous system and optimal health, absence of chronic inflammation, this optimal state is your birthright. It's achievable. Not only is it achievable, it is the naturally emergent state of your being if you allow the environment to support you in the way that it is evolutionarily supposed to.
Thank you, Jay, for your wisdom, your knowledge, the amount of in-depth sharings that you've shared with us today. Honestly, it has been so exciting, this conversation, and I have genuinely loved it. I've had my mind is blowing even more than it, every time I speak to you, I feel like I expand my awareness even more, and I learn so much from you. So thank you so much for sharing all of that, and for coming on this podcast.
Thank you, Melissa. Just every interaction that we have and continue to have is just so beautiful and feels cosmically aligned and cosmically supported. So thank you for
100%.
having me. I could talk to you forever. And I'm sure we'll keep chatting even once we stop recording this
Yes,
podcast.
100%. We will. And if you are listening out there, thank you so much for listening. I really hope this helps you or someone else to shine bright. If you enjoyed this episode, please do like this video and share it with someone who you feel might need to hear it. And if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button and comment below your thoughts on this episode or your awakening experience and share your voice. I love reading all your comments and replying to them. I'm sending so much love. Until next time, see you in the next episode.